Good morning, everybody. It's so wonderful to see you all. Welcome to today's session, the Smartify information session. I hope you're all well. My name is Gemma and I'm from the Expo North Digital team. Expo North Digital is Highlands and Islands Enterprises mechanism for specialist digital support for the creative and heritage economies across the Highlands and Islands region, and the project is delivered by Ironworks Venue. This workshop is part of HIE's Northern Innovation Hub, designed to build on and accelerate business innovation. It is funded through the Inverness and Highland City Region deal, a joint initiative supported by £315 million of investment from the UK and Scottish governments, Highland Council, HIE and UHI. I am now going to pass over to Nicola Henderson, who is our fabulous heritage specialist from the Expo North Digital team.
Gosh, what an intro. Thank you, Gemma. Good morning all. Mathan Ule. Delighted to have you join us this morning for this information session on our year 2 of our Smartify partnership. I think most people here know me, but just in case, I'm Nicola Henderson and I work as the Heritage Specialist for Expo North Digital. And I'm joined today by Christopher Baisley, Head of Global Partnerships at Smartify, by Liz Broumley, who is Co-Chair of Cromarty Courthouse Museum, and Andrea Finlayson, who is Visitor Services and Digital Collections Officer at Inverness Museum Art Gallery. The purpose of today's session is to give everyone a bit more information on Smartify, who they are, what they do, and how they could potentially help your museum or heritage setting. And we'll give a bit more information about the whole application process as well. This is year 2 of the project, and in year 1, the aim was to bring together a selection of museums from across the Highlands and Islands and give them the opportunity to be listed on the Smartify platform, supported with advice and training on digitising their collections, and have one piece of high-quality content created in partnership with Smartify for their listing. This could be an audio guide, an explainer video, or perhaps a short video tour, whatever helped the museum best meet their needs. We worked with 6 museums in year 1, and in that time, thanks to the support, advice and training given, each museum has digitised a selection of objects to put on the platform and created a tour, some audio and some video. And we've then been working with them to explore promoting that content and e-commerce opportunities as well to help them generate more income. In year 2, we want to invite 3 more museums onto the platform, offering them the same opportunities, a listing on the platform and a piece of high quality content, alongside the advice and support how to make the platform work for you. There is a time commitment from each museum, as what you'll get out of this is what you can put in. But all the museums are supported by a digital content creator. And there's also Chris and myself who are always on hand to help in any way so that we can try and limit any impact on your capacity. I will speak again at the end about the application process, but for now I'll pass to Chris to introduce you to the platform. We'll have lots of time for questions at the end, but Chris will take short breaks throughout in case anyone has any burning questions. Or you can pop them in the chat and we'll try and pick them up as we go. Chris, I'll pass over to you.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm Chris Baisley. I am Head of Global Partnerships at Smartify. My background is very much in digital engagement in culture and the arts. I've been working in this field for just coming up for 22 years now. And what I'm going to do is show you a presentation that walks you through how this all shapes out. As Nicola said, we're coming into year 2 now. I think that we're all pretty delighted with how year 1 has gone. And we'll be able to talk in a little bit more detail about that as we move through. So what I'm going to do is share my screen. Can you all see that? Just going into screen share mode. Can I just have an audible yes, because I can't see anybody now that
Yes, that's working, Chris. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so let's first of all just talk a little bit about Smartify. We are the world's leading cultural heritage app. We have 3 million objects on the platform, and those are engaged with by 4 million unique users around the world. Our biggest audience is the US, followed by the UK. We have 700 partners. Those partners range from some of the world's greatest museums, such as the Louvre or the British Museum, all the way down to one-person art galleries in Melbourne, Australia. So we're also a social enterprise, which is an important part of who we are. The app itself has a 4.7 star rating. Of our 4 million registered users, 200,000 engage with Smartify at least once a month. And we're currently adding about 80,000 new users each month to the platform. We do have a significant presence in Scotland. Scotland is Smartify's spiritual home. So you can find us at some very large places like the National Galleries of Scotland and the National Museum of Scotland. And you can find us at whiskey distilleries. You can find us at Blair Castle. You can find us in Aberdeen, V&A Dundee. And of course, you can find us with the 6 museums that are currently using Smartify with Expo North. So that's who we are, and that's what we do. We currently work this year with Expo North with these 6 museums. So Cromarty Courthouse, Gairloch Museum, Stromness Museum, Museum of the Highlanders in Fort George, Inverness Museum and Art Gallery, and with Klein Heritage Society in Brora. They've all gone through the process that we're talking now. And as I said at the beginning, we are delighted with how each one of these museums has been able to use Smartify. There's lots of different reasons why this initiative exists. Part of it is to look at how we can create a digital heritage infrastructure with Expo North in the Highlands and Islands. But also, this is the kind of software and technology and solutions that until just a few years ago really were only available to the very big national collections, the Metropolitan Museums of Arts, the Rijksmuseums and the Louvres and that kind of thing. And this has been the first time that we've been able to take that technology and give it to small community-led and community-run museums to see what they would do. And the level of creativity and professionalism and solutions and storytelling that has come out of this, I think has blown everybody away. So it really has been, I think, a critical success as well as a logistical success as well. So on that note, the first thing that we want to talk about is what are the stories that we want to tell? And in a minute, I'm going to hand over to Liz and Andrea just to talk a little bit about their experience here. But I do urge you to go onto Smartify and to look for any of those 6 museums and see the different kinds of experiences that have been developed. We range from really beautiful short videos that give a flavor of a community and a landscape that a museum sits in, which is what Gairloch have done, dealing with challenging, difficult, but very important topics like slavery, which is intrinsic to the history of somewhere like Cromarty. And then how you bring to life and bring out the stories of a diverse and varied sort of encyclopedic but localized collection, which is what we have at Inverness as well. So what I will do is I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for a second, and I'd like to hand over quickly to Liz. Would you like to just give a few sort of words about how you've approached the storytelling aspect of Smartify?
Yeah, can I just say that when we first started and I first heard about Smartify from Nicola, it struck me it was an amazing solution to something I've been wanting to do for a long time. Those of you who know Cromarty know that David Alston, who has done so much work on slavery and the Highland connection to slavery and the whole impact on Highland economy, is based in Cromarty, and he has designed his own walk around Cromarty talking about slavery, and I've wanted to digitize that for a long time. Smartify came along and it suddenly became extremely easy, and we were able to use David's skills so we could capitalize on a local resource. He was delighted to be involved. He involved somebody called Nicole Bouton, who is of mixed race slave extraction. So she was speaking about the Cromarty connection very much as lived experience. And the whole thing, in our view, just was tremendous. And we couldn't have done it without the connection with Smartify. But as we've gone on, we can see more and more uses of Smartify. And, you know, I've been looking at what Andrea and people in Inverness have done, and we're looking at how we might use some of their ideas. So the whole thing is actually very important in terms of a collective community experience within the museums. Okay.
Thank you, Liz. Andrea, would you like to say a few words about your experience with Smartify?
Yeah, sure. So Inverness Museum and Art Gallery, as you probably are aware, or maybe not, we have such a vast collection that's full of so many sort of eclectic elements, where we initially, when we were first kind of brought onto the project, we were kind of starting from ground zero and creating content for so many of the different objects that we felt needed to be included on the Smartify app in the collections element. So Carrie, our curator, was painstakingly doing lots and lots of research to make sure that the quality of the content that was being uploaded onto the Smartify app, along with wonderful images, you know, she was really editing and making that absolutely beautiful. I'm sure you've probably maybe had a chance to have a look at it. It looks great. And then, of course, there was the tour element, which was maybe more of what I was involved with. And I think once we got our sort of head around, you know, the potential that the stories that we would like to tell about the object, essentially what we did is select 10 of what we called the highlights. You know, objects that when people come to visit the museum must see, they can't miss. And within those, you know, that selection, we pulled out some of the, you know, some of the objects like the Wolfstone that is an absolute must tell. And I think Chris was loving this analogy that I gave. That was a must tell, but there was other stories as well that we felt are big hitters that people are maybe not necessarily so au fait with, like the Fresson collection that we have here. So we sort of integrated these together into what we felt deserved to be the top 10 highlight objects that were included in the tour. And then from there, we had to kind of tease out from the fantastic amount of research that Carrie put into the objects. We had to tease out what were the must tells, the should tells, and the could tells for each of these objects to condense the stops down into, you know, like a kind of coherent tour, if that makes sense. And so that's now what we have. So lots and lots of research into the collection pieces, into the objects that we've included onto the app, and we will continue to populate that. We've got lots to do, and now we're coming into the winter months. Of course, it means there's more time, and then within that, creating a tour by kind of condensing down the information that we had, making it coherent, and telling people the stories about these objects that we feel are really the really important points, so these objects effectively speak for themselves. And that's really, you know, what we've been up to thus far.
Brilliant. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Liz. So that gives you an idea of how two museums that are actually quite different to each other, how they've approached storytelling on the Smartify platform. This is a big part of what working on this project involves, because anybody can have a software platform, but it's what you do with it that makes the difference. And using the platform to do digital storytelling and cultural heritage is a huge part of why we're doing this. Most of the people who work on Smartify have many, many years of experience of working on that kind of thing. So it's a big benefit of working on this project is that skill development and that best practice knowledge sharing of how you do really good digital storytelling, how you choose your stories, how you choose which objects are going to tell those stories. And of course, because of the part of the world that we're in here, the stories that every museum has, they tend towards the epic. You know, Stromness has Scapa Flow all the way through to Skara Brae. And that's the same with every other museum as well. So, you know, it's how do you link those great epic stories into the collection that you have? Another museum is in Brora, where, you know, they are a very, very small museum with a very small collection, but the collection has amazing things that link back into all of the big stories of Scotland, whether that's sheep clearances to whiskey distilling, to the Industrial Revolution, to Iron Age history, to the Picts. It's all there. So it's understanding how to tell those stories is a big part of the process that we go through. Now, this is a good time for me to stop and see if people have got questions so far. The rest of the presentation is going to be walking you through the functionality of Smartify and what Smartify does. We do have the big Q&A at the end, but if anybody's got any burning questions, please ask them now. No? All good. Okay, I'm going back into screen share mode. Okay. So once we've sorted out our storytelling, these are all the different kinds of things that we can do in Smartify. If you go into YouTube and you put Smartify in the search bar, there are a couple of intro videos that give you an idea of what we do. So we've just talked about storytelling and how that can feed into guided tours. Object recognition is part of our DNA. So we will be also teaching you how to do object scanning so that visitors can come in and actually use object recognition as part of the experience. We have wayfinding, we have personalization. We can integrate with your CRM and membership. We can provide recommendations. We can link into ticketing. We can promote donations. We also have a marketplace, a shop. And then we have all the analytics. So you can actually see how people are using Smartify in your museum, how many tours are being engaged with, how many objects are being engaged with, who and by, and what demographics there are there as well. So to take a little bit of a deep dive into what we'll be doing in 2024. So the first thing that we'll be doing is choosing art objects. So each of the 3 museums will get to select up to 200 objects in their permanent collection. And they really can be anything. So it can be paintings, objects, they can be 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional, whether that's a former lighthouse lens in Gairloch, all the way through to Buddo, the enigmatic figure and Stromness, through to Hitler's attaché case at the Highlanders Museum, working on identifying what those top 200 objects are. One of our learnings is that sometimes it's a bit hard coming up with 200. And because of the flexibility of the Smartify platform, you don't have to do that right now. So some museums, like Andrea's museum, they've only concentrated to begin with on 20, and there's more that can come up. We then work with you in quite an interactive workshop format to think about what are the stories that we want to tell about each of those objects. What's important about it? Why should someone pay attention to it? And then how does that provide a window into other kinds of digital assets that might be available? It may well be that your museum has a phenomenal image archive or historic photo archive. Could we then include those into what we have here? So that's choosing objects. You then have access through to our content management system, where you can put the objects in, upload them, make them searchable, and these then feed through into the app. Content management system is really easy to use. It's highly intuitive. It's based on drag and drop functionality. It was designed with the idea of a volunteer-run museum in mind. So you don't need to have a degree in IT or collections management to run it. It really is intended to be very easy for everybody to use. When that's all done and when we're published, your museum then gets a global profile on Smartify and exposure to all 4 million of our users. By tagging the objects on the platform in a certain way, it makes them globally searchable. So you have the potential for a global audience to engage with your museum. One of the things that we're really keen to explore with our current museums, and obviously the additional museums will be adding to that, are sort of opportunities to use Smartify to engage with the diaspora, to engage with more international tourism opportunities. And we can help and do that with the global profile that you get on Smartify. And if you want to just find out what that's like, just go onto smartify.org, find the search function and just search any museum and have a walk around Smartify and see what you can find. We also provide all of the basic information about what your museum has. So if people are in the locality that have Smartify, they get the information about what they can see and what they can do. We also do marketing as well. So once everything is up and running, we can then repurpose the content in different ways. And if any of you are on Smartify already, maybe this week you got the push notification from, I think it was Inverness Museum Art Gallery this week, which takes a piece of content, puts it into a story, and then sends that out to our 4 million users. It then also goes into our Instagram feed as well. So creating that global marketing opportunity is a really exciting element of what we do. Basic things, the app is accessible. It's got WCAG 2.1 standards. We can also do things like British Sign Language tours, audio description tours. It works with screen readers and font sizes, so we are fully accessible as an app. You can also provide things like visitor information. And then back to where we started with actually tours as well. So the tour function is a fully built out multimedia tour function. It can play video, it can play audio, it can show images. You can download and use it offline. You can, some of our museums are choosing to charge people for it and to have this as a revenue generator. So there are options for both paid or free guides. And it's played through just as if you've got a Spotify account in terms of how you can actually access the audio. Getting people onboarded is really easy. We can integrate through if you're ticketed. We can integrate through with your ticketing system. And we also have a shop as well. So we can integrate with your shop or create an online shop environment if you don't. We can also facilitate membership and donations. And then just going back to the content management system, how easy it is to manage through the dashboard. You will get the data insight into how people are using Smartify. Here you can see our sort of overview of our 4 million users. You can see the breakdown of where they're from. You can see the breakdown there of their demographics. Actually, since this slide was done, those demographics have changed slightly. We do have more younger users now using Smartify. So the actual 18 to 24 year group has actually become our biggest group, but not by a significant margin. You can see who's using what devices. You can see demographic breakdown by gender. And then at the bottom, you can see what our sort of typical Smartify users are like. So we look at explorers who tend to be independent travelers, day trippers, quite often with families, passionists, people who love art and culture, sociables, and escapists. We do push notifications. So when you come out of the station in Inverness, you should get a notification if you've got Smartify saying, hey, go to the Inverness Museum Art Gallery and see what there is available. And as I said, we can integrate into e-commerce as well. So that is the presentation in a nutshell. You'll obviously all get copies of this so you can see it. And now really it's over to you for any questions or comments. But before I do that, Nicola, do you have anything to add to what we've just talked about?
No, I'm happy to take questions. I was going to just maybe bring Andrea and Liz in just for one other comment, because I think one of the kind of secondary benefits of being part of this is how it's supported museums to start thinking about digital in different ways throughout their whole kind of business. So I'd be interested in knowing if they feel that the project has helped them in any way about how they use digital to interpret their collections or to increase their accessibility and grow their audiences and income, if they have any kind of thoughts about how it has influenced the way they work as an organisation overall.
Well, when I first started getting interested in Smartify, one of the things that struck me is it could help us deal with a really significant issue for Cromarty Courthouse Museum. We are not very accessible. We've got quite a steep set of stairs to go up to get into the museum, and inside it, the floor levels keep changing. There's a very narrow set of stairs to get up to the main courtroom. So we were looking at something that would help us with accessibility. And one of the things that's been brilliant about being involved with the project is not only do we see how we can use it, we've still got ideas for development to take this further, but it's actually engaged our own staff in thinking about how this can be used. So for example, one day, not long after we'd gone live on Smartify, and we'd just done some basic training with our front of house staff, somebody came into the museum who was in a wheelchair. She'd actually managed to get into the ground floor and couldn't get any further. So the person on duty lent her her phone so that she could see the objects that were in the museum using the Smartify app. And that was absolutely brilliant. And this is something we're going to take. Our next development is to use Smartify on an iPad, either for somebody who can get into the ground floor, or even with people who can't access the museum itself, because we want to work in conjunction with the pub across the road, and they're happy to be a location for people to access Cromarty Courthouse Museum, despite the fact it is inaccessible. So we're finding that the longer we work with Smartify, the more ideas we get. But what's lovely is the more ideas our staff are getting, and they're suggesting ways in which we can use it as well. So that's just been delightful.
Thanks, Liz. Yeah, that's really good to hear about different ways you're thinking about it, especially around accessibility and being able to engage new audiences and ensure your venue's as inclusive as possible. And Andrea, do you have any thoughts you'd like to add?
Yeah, I mean, our experience in this from your question is maybe we're finding small things that it makes a real difference right the way up to to larger things. For example, Carrie, and I keep saying this this elusive name, Carrie. I must stress, Carrie is our curator of collections here at Inverness Museum. I'm not sure if I maybe said that previously. So the Carrie and I did a presentation recently at UHI about some of our objects and basically tying in to some art and design students and basically tying in how you could use Inverness Museum as a resource for for art and design projects. And we were really aware that afterwards, by just simply uploading the objects that we had been talking about onto Smartify, meant that the students could go back and access this without actually having to come into the museum, which for UHI and indeed for many universities now who are delivering online some courses online, that's a really valuable thing where we can simply just add a link in and say, okay, well, these were the objects that we were talking about, and they can go into Smartify and access that. So that's just as I say, just something that makes it a wee bit easier when you're perhaps thinking about how you can add value to something that you're delivering on. Smartify allows you a very, very easy and quick platform to be able to do that. Obviously you need to create the content, but as far as the uploading, the back office, it's very easy to do. So that's one example. And I suppose as time goes on, will become more a fee where it becomes second nature, perhaps children's trails. Quite interested to speak to Chris about that the other day. Whereupon we can maybe use the technology rather than keep it paper based, if that makes sense. But the other thing as well, from the front of house perspective, they've found that it's been useful, particularly for people who are already on a tour, believe it or not, because you tend to find, if people are coming in that have been on a coach, for example, they're coming in from wherever it may be, and they're visiting the museum as a tour, they're kind of then expecting that format to continue. So it allows the guides the opportunity to step back and have a coffee while they can use their phones to access the tour, and that's happened quite a few times. We found that many, there's a few tour companies that have really jumped on that, which has been really useful. And also, it's set up in a format, of course, when, whenever we pop the link onto about the tour onto any of our social media content, it means that other people, of course, can access it. And it's just as listenable, I think, when you're sitting at home, because you have the image of the object in front of you as well. Lovely narration by a local lass as well. So it's that, really lovely kind of lilting accent to listen to. So that, we have found a benefit. And we're going to sort of continue to explore that over, as I say, over the winter months as well. We've got a few ideas that we've been kicking about, and we're aware that, especially for the temporary exhibitions that we have coming in through the museum as well, or the art gallery, I should say, this might be really beneficial to going forward, or will be beneficial to going forward. So, so that's the benefit that we've found thus far. And also the other thing that we're interested to sort of explore is about sort of the use of different languages as well, to make it more accessible for people that are maybe non-English speaking, and that's something we'll talk about too.
Brilliant. Thank you, Andrea. That's really helpful in lots of different ways that you're learning to be able to use the different technology. And I like the fact that you've been using it to engage with students as well. There's all these kind of secondary benefits that maybe we don't think about at the start of the project that start to surface as you go through and you explore the different ways that you could use it. Does anybody have any questions at this stage? I can speak. Oh, yes, yeah.
I don't know if this is a common one. I can't remember if I confirmed with one of your colleagues, but I work for Orkney Museums, and our collection is held by Orkney Museum, our main building, but we have multiple museum sites. Would I need to make an application per museum site, or could I do it in the overarching Orkney Museums? Because that does cover quite a bit of quite the story.
So would you want each museum to have its own individual listing, or would you like to do just an Orkney Museums listing that would then point to
I don't know yet. That's the question. Could I do an overarching one application, or do you prefer, say, Scapa Flow Museum, just have it Scapa Flow Museum? Because that's the naval history of Scapa Flow. So Orkney Museums are archaeology, for example.
There's a lot of big stories to tell there. And maybe I'll bring you in, Chris, because Smartify used to operate that it was with, a singular museum, but you have been considering working perhaps with collectives.
Yeah, I think I'm quite happy, actually, Nicola, to defer that to Expo North.
Okay.
So I think that, we have a slot for a museum which has, 200 objects and a piece of digital content that will be created around those. And I think that I'm fine either way with how that would be done. So if you'd rather do it as a sort of umbrella thing, or if you have a specific museum with a specific story, I think that the sort of decision you have to make is, what about the on-site experience? So the on-site experience is really important, and if that is scattered across multiple sites, even in different localities, it's a bit patchy. It may be better to choose one museum and just focus everything on that, and then you can always sort of, if that works, then you can always sort of spread that out
Yeah.
and expand it later on. I certainly don't think you'd get disqualified either way. But I think the thought process is it better to have it sort of general a little bit from different museums, or to actually concentrate on one site with the stories and the objects that's going to tell?
Yeah, it's maybe, yeah, I would agree with that. I think maybe take a little bit of time and have a little discussion as to what you want to achieve from this. So I mean, the opportunity to focus on one place and really make an impact and offer that on-site experience and improve how you're interpreting those stories and reaching that audience for there could be really strong. But then maybe you want to think about it in another way around how you'd be moving people around those sites, or who you're trying to reach. So it's almost taking a little bit of time as to what this achieves for Orkney Museums, what the kind of your purpose is, and how you're trying to meet that through any of your educational or commercial goals around that, and then come back. I'd be happy to have another conversation with you.
Yeah, just one of the places that has done that really well is actually Gaelloch. So Gaelloch are obviously a single site, and they scan their objects and they have the objects in there. So you have a really nice experience in the museum. But the digital experience has very little to do with the museum. It's about this vast area that Gaelloch sits in. That gives you a different sort of exploration in different parts of that area as well. So that may be something to look at. I'd also recommend that you have a look around what Stromness have done already, which is up and running.
Yeah.
Because, if you can, you probably don't want to replicate what they've done. So
no, that's what I'm conscious of, is stepping on their toes.
I don't think they'd see you as stepping on their toes, but I certainly think that it's worthwhile sort of noting that what the overall experience could be sort of in Orkney when you've already got Stromness doing some things. Are there big areas that they don't deal with that you could deal with?
Yeah.
Or and also you have world-class collections yourself. So you mentioned Scapa Flow, but also with Skara Brae and everything. So I think the decision is single museum in depth versus sort of
scattergun
from different ones.
Yeah,
cool. So
thank you.
Sorry, Chris.
No, I just said thank you. That's grand.
Great. Yeah, if you want to come...
Could I be really cheeky and just chime in?
Yeah, no, go.
Just from a visitor services perspective, because of the locality in Orkney, because nothing is particularly far away, the idea of having multiple sites might be really, really effective for the people that are visiting.
I mean, in Kirkwall, we've got Orkney Museum, as I say, is archaeology, and then we've got St Magnus Cathedral, but our farm museums are quite out the way, and Scapa Flow Museum, you need to get a separate ferry to. So I think for Orkney Museum and the Cathedral could tie together, but yeah, and I think I need to sit down and have a chat with my colleagues and what approach to go for, but I take your point.
Yeah.
It might push people out to visit other places, but just because it's a whole different ballgame when you're islands. You can cross an island in a day.
Definitely, especially when you have 8,000 cruise passengers pour into a population of 8,000.
Exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, yeah. If you want to come back at any point, Chris, happy to meet with you again and talk it through. The deadline is not until the 13th of December. So we've still got a few weeks, and it's quite a simple application. I'll speak quickly on that just now. It is there are just kind of three main questions. One is where we just really want to hear about what your purpose is, who are your audiences, what stories is it that you tell, and then the other two are kind of looking a bit more about why you're interested in this opportunity and how it will benefit your organisation in terms of audience or digital skills, income generation, sustainability. There are some other short supplementary questions that go with it, but we don't expect you to do a lot of research into those. It's just if you can give us as much information as you can, it helps us build a profile of your visitors and the area you're in so that we can look for those kind of other opportunities within it. But those are the kind of, there are three main questions. So it's not hopefully too onerous. So yeah, if you want to go away and think about anything more in depth, then come back and meet with myself to chat that through beforehand. I'm absolutely happy to do that.
Can I ask?
Yes. Yeah.
Jonathan from the Dingwall Museum. I'm very interested in increasing footfall because we live on our donations. And it would be nice, it would be very excellent to tell the historical story that isn't always obvious within the museum, but is within the town. But I would really like to get lots of feet walking through our door, going past the donation box and putting stuff in it so that we can actually keep it going. Where will this help apart from, well, this will be a major piece of advertising and an entertaining storytelling. Is there any way that we can increase our income with it? You mentioned things like a donations button.
Well, there's a donations button, but also you can retail tours as well. So certain of the museums that are working with Smartify are selling the audio tours, and proving sustainability is a key element of why this program is there. So using your tours as revenue generators, and you charge people for the tour and they pay for the tour and off you go, is a good way to generate revenues.
We're talking quite a small museum. we've got 4 rooms. The building itself is the main exhibit, which you can only see from outside. But as I say, if we can get people in to look at the odds and ends, we've got at least one piece of national interest, and that's about it. But otherwise, it's the town's history.
Well, can I just comment on that? Because one of the museums that we have, which is Klein Heritage Society of Aurora,
yeah, of course, yeah,
they have in their collection, they have a lot of things that are just ordinary things, like cups and saucers and salt cellars and those kind of things, and they are, I think, just as important for storytelling as, if you happen to have something of national importance. And actually, I mean, Andrea, maybe you could chime in here as well, because your collection runs the gamut. I mean, you have a Turner, you have probably one of the most famous Pictish stones in the world, but you also have, the amazing story of stuffed animal, and you have that kitchen, which is exactly the same as my grandmother's kitchen was when I was a very small child. So, I think one of the delights of this program, and one of the delights of working with smaller museums, is what the everyday tells us about the bigger questions of life at that time and the context. And I think that one of the museums I've worked with on a very different project is a museum called M+ in Hong Kong, which is one of the world's biggest visual art museums. It's massive, and they have Ai Weiwei stuff, and they have pretty much every Asian artist is represented there. But the object in that museum that gets the most attention is a rice cooker, because that is what everybody has in their houses, and everybody can remember how rice cookers completely revolutionized domestic life in Asia. So, it's good to have those small things. It's good if it tells the history of the town, the story of the town through its everyday objects. I think that's lovely. That's why we do this. It's why we work in museums.
Absolutely. I'll bring Liz in a second. I would just back up saying, so that there are those different approaches, like Andrea taking the kind of highlights tour, and that's what Brora did as well, finding those objects that have a really good story behind them and telling that story well. And that takes you around the collection within. But also the nice way that Stromness have done it is they did the blue plaque trail, which tells stories around certain buildings and people that have really impacted the history of Stromness, but they've tied it back to objects within the museum as well, as a way to kind of encourage people to then come in and actually visit the objects in the museum too, so that you're doing kind of both. There are different approaches, and that's part of this. The first kind of 2 sessions that we'll have with you will work through those kind of ideas to help you kind of see what would help meet those needs, to understand those goals. If your goals is to get people through your door, then we will talk through with you what are the best ways to do that and what kind of tour would work, we would support you through that kind of decision-making process.
You've
Liz.
just said a couple of things. You've just said a couple of things in those sentences that have given me ideas for doing exactly that.
Brilliant. That's what we hope to do, is kind of bounce off, and we bring sometimes other people in who are part, because we've had 6 museums already, there's going to be 9, and what we want to do even better next year perhaps is bringing those groups together, because they've all had different ideas, and by sharing more of those ideas together, that can help to feed into new ideas and different things that each organisation will maybe experiment with and try. Sorry, Liz, you've had your hand up there for a wee while.
I just wanted to say that a few years ago, Jonathan, I spent quite a bit of time in the archives in Dingwall Museum doing some research on Hector MacDonald.
I do remember.
And you've got amazing stuff in there. You really have. And what I felt was, if I didn't know the museum was there already, it would have been very difficult to find the resources that I was looking for, which you had. And as I say, I spent hours.
Well, I don't want to sound.
Boxes.
I don't want to sound if I'm playing down. I don't want to sound as if I'm embarrassed about our paucity of collection. I'm very proud of it. I'm thrilled of it. The Hector MacDonald stuff is the bit of national importance. And we've got plenty of other stuff that will tell the story of the town. And I'm thrilled skinny with it. I just want ways of doing it. And this is a way in.
Well, I would encourage that. I think it's very much a way in. You've got the sort of things that would lend themselves very well to being digitized in, as you say, in different ways. So you can use Hector MacDonald as a national resource, but you've also got beautiful reconstructions of different kitchens. I think it's kitchens and
the kitchen and the smithy
spaces that, you know, I just found really, really exciting. But what was lacking was the publicity, and what Smartify will give you, and it's what it's given us, is more publicity.
Yes. That's what I'm after.
Yeah.
But useful publicity. Anyway, thank you, Liz, for your kind comments.
I think also when it comes to archives as well, we've uploaded some of the images from the Mary Ethel Muir Donaldson collection onto the Smartify platform, which is quite cheeky because I think it probably counts as one object, because we've said the MEM Donaldson collection, one object. But if you go into it, there's several, in fact, there's about 20 odd images in there, and we'll probably upload more. But it means that, of course, this is now accessible, because that is not something that people are able to, you know, people would need to come and make an appointment. And of course, they're accessible to everybody to come and see, but they're not on display. You would need to come and you know, there are 1,094 images there, so you would need to come and have a look, you know, make an appointment and come and have a look. But we've uploaded a few of those, so again, it's making it a wee bit more accessible for people at home, or indeed even in the museum, to see some of the images should they want to. So that's been quite good as well. I can see a cracking walk-in tour in Dingwall.
I do them. I mean, I think they're cracking.
I'm coming on your walking tour. I have to say, can I come on your walking tour?
Yep, no problem at all.
I'm coming on
your walking tour. That Stromness are kind of thinking as well, is they have a kind of curator's tour that they do, and that has a good sort of charge in it, but the curator's not always free, so they can offer a kind of tour around that they can do in Smartify when they're not free. So they're your walking tour, they're going to be the best.
I did one walking tour for the Clan Mackenzie Society, based on one that I do for the town as a whole. And then, of course, they wanted me to repeat it on a Zoom call. So I managed to translate it into a PowerPoint presentation with my voiceover. So having done it that way, to do an actual live one could go further. I may not last forever myself, so may not be able to carry on doing them on the streets for more than, say, the next 20 or 30 years. But anyway, yeah, I love the idea, your idea, Nicola, doing the tour outside, but tying it to what's inside.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jonathan. Are there any other questions?
Hi, I don't think I've got my video on. I don't know if I can make a quick question. My name is Ros McKenna, and I'm from Charts, which is Culture, Heritage and Arts for Argyll and the Isles, and I'm representing the Argyll collection. And I suppose I'm not sure if this is a question or a comment or am I right to be here? But the Argyll collection is a collection of up to about 180 artworks that were bought for the use of young people in Argyll and Bute. So they're not actually currently on display in public spaces. They're housed in secondary schools and libraries in Argyll and Bute, and the ones that are in libraries tend to be in store. So on the one hand, I can see huge benefit for Smartify for this collection, because part of my role is to raise the profile of that collection and increase the audience engagement with that collection, and indeed tell people that it actually exists, but we have no venue. So I'm sort of sitting here thinking, on the one hand, I think this could be hugely exciting because there are endless stories that could be told about the collection, but also the collection's relationship with our geographical area. So the Gairloch Museum seems to me like one that I need to go and look at in terms of research. But if we have no venue, then is it valid for me to be sitting here considering this, or how could that potentially work?
Completely valid for you to be sitting here, and that sounds like a wonderful project. There are multiple places that we work with that either have no venues or the venues are private. So we work with a couple of banks that have amazing art collections, but obviously no one can go and see them because they're in expensive offices. And using Smartify to create that public profile, I think it's one of the reasons why Smartify exists. So yes, I certainly think that wouldn't stop you from putting in an application.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I think it's an amazing way to open up that fantastic collection, and the story of that collection is phenomenal. To go from spending £100, was it, in the 90s to collect now the most important collection of African art in Europe, going right up to being valued towards 3 million. I mean, it's an amazing collection, and I think there's so much that could be done on the platform to tell its story as well as open up access to those amazing works of art.
Oh, this is African art.
Pardon?
Some
of it is. Some of it is. It's got some of the most important contemporary Scottish artists in it as well. I don't know if you want to say a bit more about it, Ros. You're obviously more informed than I am.
Well, it's got, I think it's about 179 pieces, and we have the most incredible collection of African art that we're working with St Andrews on at the minute to research. So I think there's about 12 pieces, but we've got Anne Redpath, Barbara Ray, Elizabeth Blackadder, down to kind of less well-known artists. And it was collected between the 60s and the 90s by the art advisor for Argyll and Bute Council, Jim Tyre, but also Naomi Mitchison, who had a house in Carradale down on the Kintyre coast. So not only are there an amazing collection of paintings and some ceramics and sculpture as well that, as you say, could sit easily within a national collection, but there's also this wonderful story about Naomi Mitchison as well and her relationship with the area, and the rationale behind the collection, that we are a huge geographical area in Scotland that has very little infrastructure in terms of museums and galleries, but they had the foresight to collect this amazing collection for young people who grew up never having gone into museums or galleries, and yet we have this amazing resource sitting waiting to do something with. So it's an amazing collection, and I think there's a lot of amazing opportunities that we can look at. So I'm pleased to hear that the answer is it's okay to be sitting here thinking about Smartify, because it seems almost too good to be true in a lot of ways, I think.
Yeah, no, it's a really exciting collection. I think there's so much we could do. I'd really look forward to having those conversations. So yeah, please do consider that. Lovely. If you have any other questions, as I say, I'm about and happy to chat those through with you at any time, Ros.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Cindy.
So at Cromarty Museum, we already have one of our collections has its own website, a dedicated website, but it doesn't get much interaction. We also have a volunteer who went off and created some walking tours of the area and walking and very outdated tours of our existing collections inside the museum. Like I said, very outdated, desperately need to be brought up to speed. But I'm going to have a lot of resistance if I try to move the museum into Smartify because existing solutions are already out there. In my mind, they're not effective, but I'm just wondering, can you talk to like the publicity that you were talking about? Is there a way, does it drive much more footfall into the museum? How can we? Yeah. How do I combat the resistance that I'm going to encounter?
Welcome to my world. So look, the first thing I'd say is that Smartify is not a replacement for anything. So some of the challenges that we sometimes come up against, for example, is in volunteer communities saying, well, are you just going to replace us with an app? No, that's not why we're there. And you know, well, we already have an app, or we already have a website, or we already have an archive, and that's fantastic. What we can do is we can point people into those resources. So the reason to come on to Smartify is two or threefold. First is that the level of functionality that you have on Smartify is state of the art, world class. So everything from object recognition to wayfinding to we now do personalization and all that kind of thing. They're really fun and exciting features. Second thing is in terms of how you can engage a global audience with your collection. And, you know, we really we've just started that with tranche 1. But, you know, for instance, with Inverness, we didn't take the turn as, or the picture stone as our first thing. We took an object, which was, I think, the flying cap. You know, with Brora, we took a very small object and we said, well, what happens if we put that into the same social media flow that we do if we're promoting a Monet? And seeing the global pickup of that is really interesting. So this is a long and garbled answer to your very good question, but the summary of that answer is that this is not in competition with anything. It's an additional channel, and it should be seen as an additional channel. But if it's used properly, and we help you with this, should be able to help promote your other existing channels that you already have. But I would also hope, and you maybe have heard this already by listening to Liz and listening to Andrea talking, which is the process of doing Smartify opens lots and lots of doors in terms of how the museum is engaging with it. So you suddenly start thinking, well, maybe we could do this, maybe we could do that, maybe we could do this. And because it's very easy to use, it's very easy to develop some really nice new skills that you can then apply in other parts of your museum. So, you know, if you feel that a website perhaps isn't as good as it could be, then what you're learning on Smartify is what you could transfer into doing that. I'll give you a really good example. If you've got tours that maybe they feel a bit outdated, maybe they feel a little bit sort of, one of the issues that we see beyond this project, but that I spend a lot of time on, is recognizing the sort of fundamental demographic change that we're all dealing with at the moment, and particularly on tours. I mean, my background is very much audio tours and multimedia tours, and you know, many multimedia tours and many audio tours are done in exactly the same way as they were done 30 years ago. And, you know, when we were all children, well, you know, we now have children of our own and grandchildren of our own who have a very different view of the world. And so how have we got to be able to adapt to that and think about digital storytelling in a slightly different way? And really, it's been amazing, because we haven't been pushing that, but it has been amazing watching all of the 60 museums really sort of ask themselves those questions and ideate their own solutions in response. So that's a great question, Cindy. Thank you for asking it. I hope the garbled answer kind of answers what you've looking for.
It does. It does. You gave me some ideas for how to approach it, so we'll see if I can sell it to the board.
Yeah, and we help you with that as well. So Nicola and I are veterans at attending presentations and providing information sessions and asking questions and being patient.
And I
Great.
think a bit of thinking around this project beforehand, because I know that there are other platforms out there that this could be done with, and I know that your museum as well has experimented with a couple of those as well. What was interesting around this project is the team of people behind Smartify as well, that brings that kind of passion and experience around what good content looks like and how to reach people that you don't get that anywhere else. And so it's being able to tap into that kind of expertise as well that's really special about this project. And the fact that it has 4 million users who are your dedicated audience. They are your target market. We often talk about trying to identify who your target market is, and it's hard. We can go and create and put up a lovely website. Your George Bain website's got gorgeous stuff on it, but how do you reach your target market through there? Where are they? What are they on? Well, they're on Smartify, some of them. And so they're there already. You have that dedicated audience. Now, we are still learning. I'll be honest, trying to get 6 museums all ready to launch in time for this summer was a challenge a bit too far. That's why only 3 this year, to try and get everybody on a bit earlier. So we don't really know all the numbers yet. That's why we're supporting this for over a period of time as Expo North, to give it a time to embed, to see how we can engage that diaspora, that target market, and see the difference it can make to small museums. So there is a bit of an experiment in there for us finding out. And that's why us at Expo North are trying to take away the risk from that. There is a bit of your time that's still needed. So there's no cost. You still have to think about your objects. You still need to think about how this works for your museum. But we're taking away those costs at this moment so that we can really explore that if we have that target market, we have access to that skills and experience within Smartify. How can we make that work for Highland Heritage? Because we know there's a global interest in it and we want to draw them in here. So that's what we're trying to do with this project over the next kind of year or two.
Great.
Great, thank you. We've gone a little bit past 12. Are there any final quick questions? I'll say thank you very, very much to Chris for his time and for making a presentation today, and especially to Andrea and Liz as well, because your insights over the last year have been really useful in helping people. So thank you so much. If there are any other questions at all, don't hesitate to get in touch with me. I've put my email in the chat, so reach out anytime. The application deadline is 5 p.m. on the 13th of December, so we have a few weeks. So happy to have any one-to-one conversations with anybody in that time. But if there's no other questions, I'll pass back to Gemma.
Thanks, Nicola, and thank you everybody for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed today's session and you found it informative and a valuable use of your time. I really so excited about the Smartify project. I think it's wonderful, and it's a great way to preserve our history and see our history in a digital modern world. So I hope you guys have enjoyed today. Thank you, Chris, Andrea, Liz, and Nicola, for giving up your time today as well. We really do appreciate everything that you've done today. Everybody, please do visit our website, www.exponorth.co.uk. In that website, you'll find our events section. You can sign up to our newsletter to be kept up to date with future events and any news. Also on the website, we have our video archive with lots of extremely interesting content. That's where you would find today's catch-up and any other previous recordings that we've done. So please have a look in there. As well, on that website, you will find our inquiry form for specialist sector support. So you can fill out our inquiry form and you can come through to the office. The form will come through to the office and we can arrange a one-to-one online call with one of our sector specialists should you require any advice whatsoever. So please keep that in mind. We'll get a copy of this recording out to everybody once it's available. It's usually within about a week's time, but we'll get that out to everyone as well. Please make sure to connect with us on Facebook, X, also known as Twitter, Instagram and LinkedIn. Thank you once again for joining us today.
Thank you, everybody. Absolute pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.